Coming to you from Strings and Things Studio in Ventura, California, this is the Strings Unraveled Book Club. And we are recording again, well, not again, because this is the first book club we've done via Skype, but our last episode we did of our regular podcast, we recorded via Skype, so if we sound a little different than our normal book clubs, that is why. We're all distancing ourselves from each other still. And we were supposed to take a break from books, and we decided to go see the movie Emma instead, which then we didn't go see before we couldn't, because then, movie theaters were closed. So we decided to do the book Emma instead by Jane Austen. So that is what we are going to talk about today. Did you guys read it or listen to it, or?
I did both. I started with the book, and then I ran out of time, and I went to the audio.
Uh-huh.
Started with the book, but I always do better with audio. But then the whole living a whole new life with everybody home sort of broke up my routine. And so I took Anne's trick.
Wait, let me say it. Say it. So it's really Kaity's trick.
Kaity's trick.
Well, listening to it faster.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't boring, but I listened to it at 1.75.
Oh.
Which then turns it into like Oscar Wilde quality dialogue. Like
they're always angry. They're always passionate. Everything they said is loud.
That seems very difficult with this book, because I had such a hard time remembering Mr. and Mrs. and Miss and Mrs. and it was like, okay, I had to pause it and think, who are we talking about right now? I listened to the dramatized version.
I think we listened all to the same version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it. I also saw the movie.
You
because
did
we rented
too?
it. Yeah.
I rented it.
We saw it a month ago, right when the social distancing thing happened. I watched it with my mom, and then just this afternoon I rewatched it to refresh my memory. So.
Did you have to rent it a second time?
Yeah, I think we rented it twice, because I thought we bought it, but then we didn't end up buying it. We had to anyway.
I
didn't know that buying was an option. I would own it. I like that. I watched it this week.
Yeah.
As kind of a crib notes for.
I'm sorry.
Then I went back to finish the book.
I'm sorry. I thought this was a book club again.
It is a book club. I'm not going to talk about the movie.
No. But I needed motivation to listen to it. I wish I could have listened at 1.75, but my options were 1.5 or 2. Oh. And if you try to listen to them at 2, it's like listening to the Chipmunks.
Yeah.
It's way too fast.
So I got a Kindle, and I'm new to the Kindle. Was that on your Kindle, or was it? Because I listened to Audible.
I listened to the Kindle on my phone.
Oh, that's weird.
Mm-hmm.
I could adjust it at anywhere. I'm thinking about just listening to all things at 1.25 now, because it's not that different. But I got 25% more done.
It also depends on the narrator. Some people do read slower. Like Grapes of Wrath, I listened to a lot faster, because then I would switch back to the whatever standard was, just to see. I'm like, how could I listen to the slowest man in the world?
I really think that the reader of that book did justice to the way that the people of that region talk.
I definitely think so.
I also think he sounded just like Henry
Fonda, yes.
Fonda, thank you. They both start with F-O, but I have a tendency to say Henry Ford, and that was not him. Anyway,
okay, I have a quick synopsis here that I'm going to read about the book, and then I found there were lots of book club questions for this book, so I picked some that looked good to me. Anyway, okay, so this is Emma. It says, Emma Woodhouse has the world at her fingertips. She's young, pretty, and smart. She also happens to be the reigning queen of her village's social scene. Emma lives in Highbury, a small town about 16 miles outside of London, with her aging father, Mr. Woodhouse, with her aging father, excuse me. Mr. Woodhouse loves Emma, but he's utterly unable to offer her any guidance, which is perhaps why Emma doesn't seem to have any sense of her own limitations. Life is pretty sweet, if a bit boring, and so Emma decides to spice things up by taking on a protege, Harriet Smith. Even though Emma's determined never to marry herself, she immediately decides to find Harriet a husband. Determined to make Harriet into a gentlewoman, Emma sets out to refine Harriet's tastes, especially in men. She convinces Harriet to dump Robert Martin, the young farmer who likes her, and sets her heights on the town's clergyman, Mr. Elton. Unfortunately, Mr. Elton turns out to be in love with Emma, or at least with Emma's money. After the Mr. Elton debacle, Emma thinks that she's learned her lessons in matchmaking. Luckily for us, not for Harriet. When the dashing Frank Churchill comes to town, Emma tries very hard to fall in love with him herself. She can't seem to fall head over heels for him, but she does manage to make a good deal of mischief by flirting with him in front of Jane Fairfax, a young woman who recently returned to Highbury to live with her aunts. Meanwhile, Emma decides that Frank might be the perfect new man for Harriet. Emma's exploits are watched and commented upon by her good friend Mr. Knightley. Although Emma frequently ignores his advice, she cherishes his good opinion. When Mr. Knightley accused her of belittling her poor neighbors, Emma begins to reflect upon her mistakes and even starts to change her ways. Unfortunately, Harriet confesses that she loves Mr. Knightley, not Frank. All of a sudden, Emma's plans crumble. She realizes that she loves Mr. Knightley too. Convinced that Mr. Knightley might be interested in Harriet, despite the fact that he practically lives with the Woodhouses, Emma crushes Mr. Knightley's attempts to propose to her. Eventually, all romantic muddles are cleared. Emma marries Mr. Knightley. Harriet marries her farmer, Robert Martin. Emma's story is surrounded by the side narratives of life in Highbury, including the romance of Frank and Jane Fairfax, the marriage of Emma's former governess, Mrs. Weston, and the escapades of the social climbers, Mr. and Mrs. Elton. So there were longer synopses that went much more in depth into everything because there are a lot of.
That one pretty much describes them, gives you a real. That was a really good synopsis because it tells you, it really described the characters in ways that.
Yeah.
I can see, but I didn't quite have spelled out for me.
Yeah, if you want more, read the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to start with this question that I found. It says, Austen makes an unusual choice because I was thinking about this a lot today, by selecting her as Emma as her main character, the most privileged woman in the book, the woman with little distress or vex. The Jane Fairfax storyline has much more traditional elements of tension and drama than Emma's story. Austen's own publisher traitorously said of Emma, it wants indecent and romance. Do you agree? Do you think you would rather have read about Jane? I was also thinking that I think Harriet could also be the subject. Like, there's 3 different stories here. I think you could tell it from Harriet's perspective, you could tell it from Jane's perspective, and then Emma's like totally the villain if you're telling it from Jane's perspective.
You guys
keep saying
that Emma, you wanted to smack Emma. I don't see what your problems with Emma are.
Yeah.
She's very knowledgeable. She wants to help people.
She's a royal Badinsky who doesn't think she's wrong.
No.
I don't see your problem, girls.
This other question says,
are you identifying?
I might be taking a tact to bait you both.
Yeah. This says, about Emma, Jane Austen famously said, I'm going to take a heroine whom no one but myself will much like. So, did you like Emma?
It's refreshing because if you read a lot of Austen, it's not quite formulaic, but because she writes what she knows, like she's really writing of her times. She's writing about the women who she's around and has seen her whole life. So Emma is refreshing if you think of the cast of characters. And if you want Jane Fairfax, you can read Pemberley. If you want Harriet, I mean, I don't know, maybe Sense and Sensibility. Like, you can you don't find Emma as a fully fleshed out character anywhere else, but you can find the other two archetypes throughout her
literature. You could find the archetype of Emma in probably.
And most of Jane Austen's writing was satire. She was a female satirist who was poking fun of the social systems that were there, gently and stuff that she could relate to. There are, while it's not a formula, there's definitely a style in the way she develops her characters that I could see as we discuss it. We'll discuss it more later on in the book discussion. But I noticed the character development. Like, yes, I really wanted to smack Emma in the beginning. And in the end, I just wanted to hit her a little less, but I kind of liked her.
You like her because she's young and naive, and you're like, she's cute. You know what she's doing. And
it's like you just want to say, she's so 18, right? Yeah, you want to say she's such a teenager.
Yeah, exactly.
She's a well-aged woman, isn't she? In her 20s.
Yeah, probably.
That doesn't mean that she's mature. I think okay. Mature is not the right word.
That's an interesting thing for you to say, Karin, because I get frustrated by listening to our contemporaries all the time talking about like that person's 32. What are they doing running a ... or that person is 36. Why, they're just a baby. What are they doing with themselves? Or that person's 25. Oh my goodness,
It's not about age. It's not about the age number. It's about life experience ages you differently.
But I think that's the point I'm making is that you look at the context of her time. Like, she's very close to becoming the spinster aunt,
right?
That talks about being tempted to be.
But
she
was capable. The only reason why she was capable of doing that is because her father. She was in a household where she didn't have a mother type. I mean, other than her nanny friend. Her father made allowances in the way that many fathers in Jane Austen books make allowances for their daughters.
What's interesting is like that's more of her obtuseness. Is she's not even like she's happy to have the privilege and run the household that like she says that she has more ability to run the household than any woman or bride would. But when she talks to Harriet about what a good plan, how she's comfortable being the spinster aunt, she looks at Jane Fairchild's aunt.
Oh yeah.
And she's like, look, it's fine. Fairfax, thank you.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, look at what great her niece comes and takes care of her.
It's great.
Yeah, but then later on, the way she treats her later, and the way does she really want to be the person that doesn't? Huh?
I said she's a petulant child. She is.
That and like, I mean, Jane's aunt and grandmother are not like living well.
No.
They're living hand to mouth, trying to have a semblance of like grace to their life.
Teasing with my mom today, saying that I'm going to grow up to be Jane Fairfax's aunt and just be so excited when my niece comes to visit me. I got a letter today.
Let me tell you about the letter, and then I will read the letter to you.
Yeah. That's good.
I really liked Jane. I liked Jane, but then I kind of could understand why Jane was always so quiet about things, why she's so private, because she doesn't have means. She is poor. Her circumstances is because she's going to go live with her aunt, but she doesn't have good circumstances. But I think that I get the sense that in that neighborhood, I don't know, maybe she never really got along with Emma, rightfully so.
See, Jane is the cardboard character here. We only know Jane through other people's expression about her. We know Jane.
No about her at all.
Yeah, none of her inner life.
Well, you can make an image of what she's like through the collage of other people's opinions.
Is that a fair representation? Like,
Well, you get a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person, and you get a little, because they don't all think the same. Different people have different opinions of her.
Yeah.
Actually, outwardly, they're all the same, because Frank, even, in his effort to keep his
secret
garage going,
yeah.
He's a cad.
No. I mean, I don't want to choose him, but it was a game they were playing for the public's sake.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, he played that game with Emma a little too much.
But she's no fool. Like,
I think she let herself be fooled. She made up. Remember, she had made up stories. She didn't know him, but she'd already made up stories and an image of his character before he ever came into the neighborhood.
I don't think she was being foolish. I think what the synopsis said, that she tried really hard to fall in love with him, because she had this vision of him like, if I'm going to marry somebody, it's going to be this guy. From everything I've heard about him, he is the one. Like,
the perfect man.
She's fooling herself, not anybody else,
True.
into thinking that this is she's going to try really hard to get with Frank, and that's why I think he took the opportunity to flirt with her so much, is because he saw, like, she likes me,
Why not?
This is a good distraction.
I definitely like the literary, portrayal of Emma much better than any film portrayals I've seen of her. Like, though I've not seen the most recent movie, Gwyneth Paltrow's portrayal in the 90s was like...
I've not seen that one.
I haven't seen it.
Very grating.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of the
Gwyneth Paltrow.
But that's before she annoyed me in her in her business and personal life. The guy who played Mr. Knightley, I can't come up with his name right now, but I think his portrayal was on point in that film, because I did not get that Mr. Knightley liked her.
Mm.
Like, that came out of the blue. As in the movie you went and watched right after, Katie.
Yes, I know. It does come out of the blue. You're like, Paul Rudd, what are you doing? I was this close to watching Clueless today, but I ran out of time.
I was thinking about you having mentioned running to go see Clueless after finishing the audiobook. And so I had kind of fun in my head imagining those actors really portraying the words as opposed to like a more modern.
I think the difference between Emma and Cher is that Cher is like a genuinely nice person. Yeah. And Emma is only out for herself and her like society. Like, I think Cher just ends up being popular because she's pretty and also she's nice to everybody. Mm-hmm. Emma is there for her, because of her situation, but yeah, I don't think that that's a fair portrayal of Emma in a...
One for one. They definitely softened her up some.
Yeah. I didn't see the one from the 90s with Gwyneth Paltrow, but I felt that the recent movie, compared to the book, she was pretty accurately portrayed in the new movie. I thought so.
I would agree with that.
Then.
She's annoying, but you also kind of like her, but you're also really annoyed by her. One of these questions...
Whether it's the movie or the book, she can't help herself. It is her character. No. To give into whatever whim she has, because you get the sense that in her whole life she's never really had to exercise self-restriction other than what society puts as a level that everybody has to exercise. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times how many times does she swear she's not going to do this anymore? And then before the thought's done getting out of her lips, she's already thinking, who else am I going to set up?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
she's bored. She's like a real housewife.
Yeah.
Without the man.
This says that with her carpet work.
What?
Somewhere in there she says that if she ends up being stuck at home with her dad, she'd be very content with her carpet work.
Oh yeah.
Oh, doing tapestries and probably rug hooking.
Yeah. Okay. That is I mean there's not a lot of mention of needlework in this one.
They don't really have a lot of time. They're too busy running other people's lives.
Okay, next question.
So this says, class issues run through every plot line in the book. How would you describe... Oh, wait. Hold on. I skipped to the wrong question. Okay, sorry. Early in the book, Emma tells Harriet she does not plan to marry, but the other women all embody, in one way or another, the serious economic consequences of staying single as a woman. The book is filled with women at risk. Discuss this with reference to Miss Bates, which we already sort of did. She's the spinster aunt. Jane Fairfax, Mrs. Elton. Mrs. Elton is my favorite. Mrs. Smith and Miss Taylor. The movie portrayal of Miss Elton, you just want to punch her in the face. She's so obnoxious.
She makes me love Emma.
Yes.
That's how much.
And Mr. Elton, oh my gosh, the two of them together, it's like, oh, they're so annoying.
I kind of feel sorry for the poor man. Anytime he starts to speak up, she's like, oh no, honey, you have no thoughts.
Don't you think that's fair for Mr. Elton to get someone like her, though?
Yeah, definitely.
That's who he needs. Yeah, he's the kind of guy who needs someone to tell him what to do.
Someone else to.
Yeah.
Well, also, I mean, his self-approximation of his value is like way up here. I love, was it Mr. Knightley who says, like, I don't think that Harriet's the right match because when he's with other men, he's really clear that he wants to marry us.
He says that to Emma, and Emma's like, well, thank you so much for enlightening me. Yes. Yeah. It's interesting to think if he thinks of Emma so highly and, like, is in love with her, mostly for her money.
Yeah. Well, that was my favorite part to, like, remember the equal events in Clueless where I can't remember that actor's name. Like, so fake. And I just kept picturing the Rose picture or something. Like, doesn't she take a picture with,
Oh, that's, yeah. I don't remember that guy's name.
I don't think he's done much since teen movies.
No, I don't think so either.
But anyway, like, the obnoxiousness of his, bobbing over her is revolting.
So this goes into this other question. Two characters, Mrs. Elton and Frank Churchill, come to Highbury from the outside world and threaten the little community with change. Mr. Knightley likes neither of them. How do you feel about either of them?
Well, Frank, he's such an uncertain character because he's such a mysterious figure for so much of the book, like so much of an idea. Like when she convinced herself she was in love, I was thinking she convinced herself she was in love with the idea of him. Like, not him, right? So he's this idea of mystery and uncertainty. And then he turns out to be, like, okay. Like, we don't know what he's about. He likes his stepmom. He is sweet to Emma. We don't find anything, like, objectionable about him until he arrives at the garden party all sweaty and hot. Yeah. Like, he's lovely until then.
Yeah.
And then, we find
Jake gets mad and leaves. Yeah.
Didn't she describe him because he was like, she was trying to figure out whether she liked him or not, and liked that he is nice, but he's kind of irreverent. His humor is kind of irreverent sometimes, and it kind of breaks up the monotony of everyday village life, which is kind of exciting to hear. So it's like the first, like when the little kid hears someone else say a bad word, it's exciting, but, they're not going to say it themselves.
I think that Mrs. Elton, like, she is a really good element to show how, she won't be a force for change because, like, when she is at her worst, and she and her husband are being the worst, by snubbing Harriet at the dance, like, Mr. Knightley comes in and is the hero. And
Mr. Knightley is the only one that puts them in their place. Because she tries to invite other people to the vicarage to like, or whatever the place is, to go on the garden party, and he's like, no, I can invite my own guests, and she's like, no, really, I'll do it, it's fine. And he's like, the only woman who's allowed to invite guests there is basically his mother. He tells her like, no,
his future wife.
Oh,
his future wife.
Yeah, future wife.
Whoever she might be.
Yes, exactly. I like that he's the only one that can like completely see through both of them. Mrs. Elton
he has no problem calling
Frank
people
Churchill,
out
from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, and Emma's like, why do you have such a bad opinion about Frank? You don't even know him.
How old is Mr. Knightley? Because from the beginning of the book, I got the idea that he's not as old as her dad, but definitely older than she is.
16 years older than her.
Yeah.
At some point, they talk about he says, I'm 16 years your senior.
Oh, yeah.
She's 21 years old, so he's 37.
But maybe that's why he feels capable of saying, hey, straighten up. That was mean. Or, no, he's not going to be, he's old enough to, he's his own man, for sure.
And he acts enough, he's so much a part of the family, he acts enough like her brother that he can tell her, this and that. And it's dealt with a lot better in the book than it is in Clueless, because then you're like, why are you kissing your brother?
Step brother didn't go together.
Doesn't matter.
Are we talking about, are we talking about the movie Clueless from the 90s?
Yeah.
I never made that connection that was Emma.
Oh, yeah. It's very...
It's like...
watch it tomorrow, and you'll see it so
I will.
About you is Taming of the Shrew. I think it's the same director who
Okay.
made the other one. And there's another one, too. I don't remember what the other, like, Shakespeare...
10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
The Shrew. Right?
If Clueless the musical comes to LA, I want to watch it.
10 Things I Hate About You is one of my, like, in that category, top 5 favorite movies.
Oh, it's so good.
And in both movies, 2 stars dead before their time. I can't think of her name. So in Clueless, the girl who plays Harriet's equal, Brittany Murphy.
She's so cute in that movie with her red hair. Oh, I love her so much.
Yes.
I'll have to watch that then. And then I'll be sad.
Well, not
you could have watched it before and been like, this is a fun movie. It's like completely satire. And you're like, this is funny. And now that you've like read Emma and you're more like experienced with this story, you have to watch it and you're like, oh, that's so and so and that's so and so, and it's very fun to watch.
I could never think of his name because he's only Turk from Scrubs for me.
Yes.
I love the two of them. So now I get that they're the Mr. and Mrs. Weston.
Yeah.
Competition.
With his little braces, he's so cute.
He is the cutest. He's in a new show called Emergence. I think it's an ABC show. Have you guys seen it? It's very good.
Oh. It's a sci-fi kind of show?
Yeah. And I
did see it.
The sweetest, cutest, like he always is.
Donald Faison.
Yeah, that's that.
Yep.
Anyway.
Let me get back to my questions. Okay. One effect of the hidden Jane Fairfax / Frank Churchill story is to undermine the omniscience of the narrator. Some critics suggest that the narrator controls the reader less in Emma than in most Jane Austen books. Because of this, I don't know who Reginald Farrar is, has suggested that the book only improves upon rereading. Only when the story has been thoroughly assimilated can the infinite delights and subtleties of the workmanship begin to be appreciated. Hold on. Where did it go? He suggests that rereading Pride and Prejudice allows you to repeat the pleasure you had the first reading, but rereading Emma always provides new pleasures. He also says that until you know the story, you are apt to find the movement dense and slow and obscure, difficult to follow, and not very obviously worth the following. Do you agree with any of this?
Yes. The whole time you're reading the question, I'm yes. Because, I mean, even in, like, I've never read this one, but I've watched one movie version and then one, retelling or reimagining of it. And it's definitely richer. Because, like, I didn't know what Clueless was based on. Because I definitely saw Clueless before the other. I was like, oh, isn't this a cute movie? And then I saw the Gwyneth Paltrow Emma. And I was like, this is like Clueless. I think I know which one came first, though. So, so that was fun. But I didn't understand who each one was. Because I think I was still a little shell-shocked from hooking up with your stepbrother.
Yep.
And then this time, I could see all of the matchups clearer.
Uh-huh.
And it was definitely fun to know who's who and who's gonna work out with who. And
I would agree that the first time reading it, because I had seen Clueless, obviously, but it's been a while, so I knew it was based on that. But it wasn't super fresh in my mind that I could remember exactly what was going to happen. And also, it's different enough that it's not always one-to-one.
Yeah.
And I do agree with whoever that man is that was saying those things, that I did feel sort of bogged down while I was reading it for the first time, because it's like, there's so much going on, and I don't understand, like, why all this is happening, because it's true that they keep you in the dark for most of it, and then all of a sudden you have this reveal that Jane Fairfax and Frank are together, and it's like a secret engagement and whatever, and then it all sort of falls into place that I could totally see that now I want to reread it and just enjoy it so much because I know what's going to happen. But I do feel like I was kind of bogged down when I read it the first time, like, this is a lot of things happening.
That's a delightful thing to know, that I'd have as much fun, if not more, coming back to it. Like, I think Austen, and that's why it keeps getting revisited in book clubs and in film, because it is there's such delightful characters to get to know.
Yeah. Hang on while I look for a new question.
I want to come back to the economic peril that all the women are in.
Okay.
Like, that is something, I mean, it's true throughout history that women often find themselves reliant on the successes and choices of their husbands or significant others, or anyone. Go ahead.
Sorry. Have you seen the new Little Women? Because Amy has a perfect dialogue about this, where she's talking about how marriage is an economic prospect for women, and it's not for men. But she goes into it perfectly, saying, like, if you're trying to tell me that it's not, like, money has nothing to do with my prospects in marriage, like, that's totally false, because you're not a woman and you don't understand what it could mean for me and my family if I don't marry somebody that's wealthy.
Yep.
So I think for Emma, she's not concerned with being married because she's already wealthy and well off and, has plenty of money. But for people like Harriet and Jane, who don't have those privileges, I don't think Harriet goes into it thinking she deserves a whole lot, and she doesn't end up with a whole lot, except that she's the example of somebody who marries for love and not for money.
And she had a false peril anyway. I think that at the end, don't they say that, like, that her father is someone who's going to support her the rest of her life anyway?
Yeah, but I think, wasn't he not, like, a gentleman at the end of it?
No, he was a tradesman. So he was more apt.
She got, like, what she... Yeah.
She ended up marrying her same kind anyway.
Well,
right.
But you're...
Match of equals was the point of that, I see.
Besides economics, I actually bookmarked something in my Kindle about the differences between what life for a man and life for a woman was like. There was one section where she's talking to Mr. Knightley. She says, "No," says Emma, laughing. "Perhaps there might be some made to his coming back again. Such language for a young man entirely dependent to use." I thought the ability to speak your mind and to even the nobody but you, Mr. Knightley, would imagine it possible, but you have not an idea of what is requisite in situations directly opposite to your own. But it made me also think upon what a woman could say and what a man could say also, because then he responds later on, depend upon it, Emma, a sensible man would find no, when he's talking about, she's making excuses for why she's saying that there's lots of reasons why he may not be able to come back, and he's basically saying any man of any worth can do whatever he wants. And that just really struck me as interesting because he was talking about a man of sense would make it in a proper manner, would do him more good, raise him higher, fix his interest stronger with the people he depended on than all that a line of shifts and expedients can ever do. Respect would be added to affection. They would feel that they could trust him, that the nephew who had done rightly by his father would do rightly by them. He's saying that if he really wanted to, all these excuses for not coming would, he's just making excuses. But I just was struck by the idea that a man he could make his excuses. A woman couldn't. Socially, a woman really didn't have that power. So.
Hang on, I lost my place again.
Example though, like that one was more the opposite of you, was not about what a woman could say or not. It was the perception of whether or not Frank had the freedom to move without his adoptive mother dictating what he did.
True, and I think I went to the wrong bookmark. It's part of it, but it reminded me.
There are like these two quotes in an Emma and Mr. Knightley exchange that were so perceptive, but I was listening to it too fast.
It just whizzed right by me and I didn't catch it.
God, that's life advice. So hopefully I find it next time.
I started just hitting bookmark. If I have the time to stop and pause it and try to actually highlight on my Kindle, I've been doing that. So.
This question says, class issues run through every plot line in Emma. How would you describe Mr. Knightley's views on class and privilege? Harriet Smith is, quote, the natural daughter of nobody knows whom. In fact, her illegitimacy or her undetermined class standing is more important in reflecting her marital prospects. How do you feel about Emma's hopes to see Harriet married above her expectations? How does Emma's relationship to Harriet change over the course of the book? I think Harriet's an interesting character that I want to flesh out a little bit more, because you feel really bad for her because you know exactly what Emma's doing, and you know how much she likes whatever his name is, the farmer. Can't remember what his name is. But
it's not Fred, is it?
I think it is Fred.
Could be.
I'm gonna look up farmer.
Robert Martin.
Robert Martin.
Never mind.
Fred Martin. Robert Martin. Whatever.
Well, you didn't look at his middle name.
Yeah, true.
Sure. I don't know if they gave it, but.
Let me check my version. You guys don't have to.
Harriet wants so hard to try and be to be thought well in the eyes of Emma, and I don't know if it's just Emma herself or that she cares about her opinion, or people like Emma, like her class, that she cares about their opinion. It seems to me like she really only cares about Emma liking her.
Yeah.
Is a big personality.
Right.
She kind of is an Oprah. She sort of dominates the room.
Yeah. And it's sad to watch her listen to Emma so intently. And I love the scene when she gets the letter from Robert Martin about his proposal, and she is trying to ask Emma, should I say yes or no? But Emma's operating under the assumption that she's gonna, of course she would say no. But, and this happens a lot in the book where the two, and especially with Harriet and Emma, the two characters are talking about something, and they're talking about two opposite things. Like when she's in love with Mr. Knightley, but
Totally
Emma thinks she's in love with Frank, and it's like frustrating to watch, but you know that she cares so much about what Emma thinks that she's like, wait, you think I should refuse him? And Emma's like, yeah, duh.
But I'm not telling you what to do.
But I would never tell you what to do, I would never give you my opinion on the subject, but.
I mean,
but here it is.
Yeah. I mean, I might be forced to tell you anyway.
Yeah.
But since you asked.
I mean, you did ask. So I mean, Mr. Knightley is there to preserve the classism.
Are we supposed to like Mr. Knightley?
Well, he's classic, actually. If you lined him up side by side with Mr. Darcy, you're gonna get, I mean, a slightly less deep Mr. Darcy, because Mr. Darcy likes things the way they are. He quiet and private. He's about business. He wants people to act properly. He's so tightly confined by how people acting properly. So he's a classic. Like, there's not a lot of depth to Mr. Knightley. He's kind of the MacGuffin of the book. What is it? The ego and the id? Like, which one's the serious one?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's the id. So he's kind of the id. And she is the ego.
Well, that would make sense.
Because definitely the two characters balance each other well.
Uh-huh.
And maybe he's even the killjoy of the book, because he's always like, no, that's not how things work. Let me show you the reality of the situation.
Yeah, he's a little mansplaining.
Yes, he's very mansplaining.
Isn't that pretty much of the time, though?
But
I mean, you recognize that she's a woman of intelligence, yet he's only
and that's an interesting thing.
Karin, can you say that again? Because you were cutting out. I couldn't hear what you said.
I said he recognizes that she is a woman of intelligence, and she usually blind spot others socially, and so I think he respects her intelligence, but also feels like he needs to to keep her from becoming a Mrs. Ellen in the future. And that's what I was thinking, that he tries to correct her. He calls her out.
Karin, I can't. You're like real. And is she Skippy for you?
Yeah.
I now you're kind of frozen.
I'm not. Am I moving?
You're not moving, and I can barely hear you.
Okay.
Oh my God, Bill Nighy's Mr. Woodhouse in.
It's so good. His character's the best. He's so good.
Love him.
You will about that. He's so funny.
Because Miranda Hart's in it. Oh my God! As soon as I leave, I'm watching it. I am not sure about that question of like, were we ever supposed to like Mr. Knightley? Because if it weren't Paul Rudd, and I meant to look at who the older Mr. Knightley, because he was pretty cute and charming.
The guy in the new movie is not that cute.
No.
He really needs a serious haircut, and he would look okay, but he's not cute. He's not convincingly cute in the new movie.
So, but I think he's not supposed to. I think he's not supposed to be the handsome. And the Frank Churchill is the handsome one, supposedly.
Well,
Frank Churchill's not that cute in the new movie either.
Jeremy Northam, who is still a very handsome man, but he was real hot at this time, and then Paul Rudd. Wait, which Mr. Knightley? Oh, there you go, John Knightley. Anyway, they're very hot, and it's hard to like them.
So, except for Paul Rudd, it's really hard not to like him.
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like Jeremy Northam, gorgeous. Paul Rudd can do no wrong.
Exactly.
Like, even I watched him in this one movie that was such a head trip. It had Alexander Skarsgård and Paul Rudd, and Paul Rudd played a straight out villain. And
weird.
I wanted him to win. Like, I really did.
So cute.
He'd just smile and cute blue eyes. Are you still there, Karin? I think we've lost you.
I'm here. No, I'm here.
Karin, can you leave and then come back in? Karin, can you leave? I'm trying to think of a way to say that.
I wonder if, like, your kids are streaming something or something.
I can't leave. I guess, how do I leave?
Hold on. I can kick you out. Oh, she gone.
The old Mr. Elton is perfect. It's Alan Cummings. And that is exactly the way I
meant. That is good.
Yeah.
The Mr. Elton in the new movie is so obnoxious.
Well, good.
And like creepy.
You guys
not yet anyway.
No. I can. It's clear on my end.
That's better. Okay.
I can see you. Say something.
Blah blah blah. No.
Okay.
Repeat the last thing you said, because you guys were laughing and I missed the joke.
Mr. Elton in the new movie is creepy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
In the 90s when
it's what?
In the 90s when it's Alan Cummings and he's perfect. He's like that imprinted on my brain that is.
Yeah, that is a really good representation of him. I could see that.
Cummings was Mr. Elton?
Yeah. In the older one.
Apparently I have to watch that.
It's okay. Because, it stars Gwyneth Paltrow and I'm not a fan.
Okay. Does anybody have any last remarks or anything else they want to say about it? Hi everyone, sorry to cut in here, but we were losing connection with Karin via Skype, so I had her call me on my cell phone and record the audio off of that. So we apologize if it sounds a little worse, if it's hard to hear Karin. It's only for just a few minutes here at the end. And again, apologize for the bad audio, but doing the best we can. Thanks.
I really enjoyed this movie book. I think it'll be fun when things are normal again for us to go to a movie. Mm-hmm. How about you, Karin?
One of the things I like about Jane Austen is the male and female are always protagonists, and they always have come together in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's typical of what I love about Jane Austen. I was not disappointed.
Good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought the characters were both fun to like and also hate, and I'm excited to read it again because I watched it again and that was fun, knowing what was going to happen, and then, like you said, you see the sort of intricacies of the writing in how it would be more apparent in the book in how she sort of misdirects you in different directions and keeps information from you in order to keep you in the dark. So knowing that now, I'm excited to read it again. But I thought it was fun. It's also not a really long book. I don't remember how long the Audible was.
9.5 hours or something. I don't think it was very much abridged because I started and read the first 5 or 6 chapters, and except for the parts where they paused to truly exchange dialogue, mm-hmm. I think all it's missing is the Emma said and Mr. Knightley said, and he said.
I didn't feel like I missed out on anything.
How many did you say yours was?
9.
9.5.
Mine's 14.
Oh, I don't know what you were listening to.
Yeah, I listened to the one with Emma Thompson as the main narrator.
Yeah,
Huh. Yeah, ours wasn't that long. Anyway.
Maybe they just read a lot slower, and when I sped it up, it made it go the normal pace.
Yeah.
I don't.
Okay.
But do you guys have any book recommendations since we last met that you did on your own?
I have not read anything on my own. I thought I would get so much reading done, and I haven't. So no.
So I've read the only book we should all be reading or listening to right now because it's the true telling of what we're living through.
Uh-oh.
In like late February, early March, people started talking about, did you guys hear that there was a Dean Koontz book that talks about a virus from the Wuhan area in China? I was like, no. Yes, it was written in 1981, and it's all about this virus coming from China.
It mentions it, but it's not necessarily about it.
It's not about it at all. It's a romance thriller novel. There is there's like a mention of it at the very end when you're getting like the whole final exposition.
What is it?
It's called The Eyes of Darkness, and it's by Dean Koontz. It was originally published under his pseudonym, I think Lee Childs. And kind of like another book we did, I think my favorite part was the epilogue, where it was a fun book and I enjoyed it, and I've never read any Dean Koontz, and it's the light fun thriller reading. But he talks about them trying to turn it into a TV movie. Think about when it was written in 1981. It is 38 years old. It is not the foretelling of the thing that we're living globally of COVID-19. But it was weird that this book existed in 1981.
Okay, so we talked about what our next book club choice is going to be, and even though it was my suggestion to see Emma the movie, it didn't really count as a real suggestion. We decided since things got weird and it ended up being a book anyway. So I get to pick the next one. And I chose a book called Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was reading to Anne and Karin sort of like a little synopsis. It's about, it says, everyone knows Daisy Jones and the Six. The band's album Aurora came to define the rock and roll era of the late 70s, and an entire generation of girls wanted to grow up to be Daisy, but no one knows the reason behind the group split on the night of their final concert at the Chicago Stadium in July of 1979. So it's about coming to age in LA, like Sunset Strip in the late 60s, and this woman and her band's rise to fame, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll, basically, I think is a main theme of the book. But it looked interesting, and I think it came out not too long ago. I'm trying to see when it was published. I think it might have been published last year.
Am I the only one who was alive when this happened?
Yep. It was published March 5th, 2019, so it's only a year old. So that's what we've decided to read / listen or whatever for the next episode, which will be out next month. So you got a month to listen or read Daisy Jones, and we'll do this again next month.
All right. Good to see you guys. I miss you.
Yeah. I hope everybody's listening home and safe and doing well, and we will talk to you again next month. Who knows if we'll do it in person or like this again. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Happy reading.